Om Sahanavavatu Sahanau Bhunaktu Sahaviryam Karavavahi Tejasvinavaditam Astoma Viddhishavai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. May that one protect us both together. May that one nourish us. May we work conjointly with great energy. May our study also be vigorous and effective. May we not unnecessarily dispute or hate each other. Peace, peace, peace be unto all. So it's nice to see so many of you. And welcome to the Vedanta Series Question and Answer. This is our opportunity to bring out all the things that are on your mind. Not necessarily all the things, otherwise we'll all get headaches, but whatever is relevant in terms of our purpose of life. Our purpose of life in Vedanta is only one thing. We can describe it either in theistic terms or we can describe it in other terms. Theistic terms say a vision of God. And others will say to get your freedom. Both of these amount to the same thing. So I wait for any questions.
This is in reference to the parable told in Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna about the woodcutter who went to the forest to cut woods and then was told that go forward. And then he went forward and got some more precious trees and wood and got rich. And then after some time again went forward to find some silver mine, gold mine, like that. So in our current state, with the specific examples, can you please elaborate that? What does that mean, go forward?
If we want to go forward, we have to understand where we are now. Some people already think that they are forward. So every element of progress requires us to make an assessment of where we stand now. What is our status quo at the moment? For most people, our status quo is related to the world which we appreciate in 5 ways. 5 objects of perception are there. Of course, there may be many more. We're only equipped to catch 5 things. Is there much more to that? And when we analyze those 5 things more comprehensively, we find them to be something like creative waves. A very fundamental principle in the Vedanta philosophy is to understand that there is a dissimilarity between the senses and what is fundamental to the senses, what stands underneath, where we can shift our attention and stand there poised. And when we do that, we're going a little deeper or a little further. And every day we should be inching further. That means the intensity of our spiritual practice should be more. It's not fruitless, because with each movement forward, as it were, or whichever way you like to look at it, deeper, if you will, or higher, if you will. For every, you see, the parable will tell us there's a forest and you're going into it. It's suggesting further means deeper. You're going deeper into the forest. What is a forest? A forest is a kind of unknown confusion. And what is the culmination of each daily adventure in the parable? Is to find something, discover something precious. So our whole life should be considered to be an adventure. Very often we don't consider it like that. We consider it to be something like a struggle. The world is against me somehow, and I feel a little bit of a victim. So very often people sit down, or even people in so-called normal circumstances where they're relatively stable, something will knock you in life, all of a sudden, knock you off balance. You are equipped to deal with things correctly. Correctly means in such a way that it doesn't give you any stress, or it doesn't give you any mood which brings you down. In other words, I'll give you a contemporary example, because you see the American election has just taken place. And during the time when Joe Biden was elected, Donald Trump was on the golf course. So I don't know what his state of mind was. No doubt it was, let me play golf. But in the middle of what many people think as a great crisis, some person, as an example, because we have no insight into anybody's mind, finds, oh, let me go on the golf course, because whatever is happening is happening. Some philosophical attitude like that. So we have a way of coping with things, but that only is maintenance. We have to do much more than that. We have to investigate deeper levels, and the Upanishads give us many different options. One option is to think that there are layers within us. Taittiriya Upanishad tells us that there are koshas, sheaths, as it were. Imagine now something like sheaths, a sword within a sheath, within a sheath, within a sheath, something like that. Or Russian dolls, one within the other. You take off one, another one, another one, another one. When we held a one-day Bhagavad Gita workshop some years ago for children with an unbelievable age range, ranging from something like 6 years of age, I think, to about 16. So how to convey this idea that there's something deeper in you? So I had the idea, let's arrange the children in a circle. And let them sit on the floor, and we'll give a parcel. And the parcel will have a small statue of Krishna, tiny thing like this. You know, the Kathopanishad gives us a wonderful meditative picture. That Purusha of the size of a thumb. Can Purusha be the size of a thumb? Can it be limited like that? No, it's for meditation purposes. You can imagine in the heart some lotus opening, and there, size of a thumb, a light without smoke, a lamp without smoke is how it's described. Kathopanishad is very beautiful at describing these things. So we take a small statue, put it in a box, and then cover it with one layer, one box outside that, another one, another one, another one. So I play some music. There's a children's game called Pass the Parcel. We did the same thing. Music plays, they pass the parcel. And of course, children want to hold on to it. There's a lesson for us. They want to hold on to the outer package. When you give a very small child a gift that you think is very precious, you'll be amazed. They're not interested in it. All they're interested in is the package. They're quite happy scrunching up all the paper. So in this way, we're quite happy with our status quo on the surface. On the surface means it's all an assumption. We assume that there's nothing more, therefore nothing more to the attempt to get a kind of happiness. But it's a struggle. It's a struggle because we're pulling against things, fears and doubts and temptations in the one way, things that are painful, and dragging ourselves toward things which are pleasurable. And even sense pleasure is just a symptom of our inner urge for a higher bliss, a higher state of things, driven toward a state of perfection somewhere. All of us are driven in this way. In that sense, there's no such thing as an atheist. Swami Purnananda redefines this word atheism. That previously we thought an atheist is somebody who doesn't believe in God. But I can tell you now, An atheist is somebody who does not believe in himself. The fundamental question is, I exist, what is that? So when we peel off all these layers, 5 layers that Taittiriya Upanishad mentions, 5 sheaths, physical sheath, made from just yesterday's, what did I have yesterday? Maybe rice and what have you, rice and dal. That's all this body is made from. So it's made from food. That's an accurate statement. It's not just this body that is made from food. All bodies are made from food of some kind. We can describe the whole universe as a fuel. Everything is fueled. Energy is put in. It is expended. It transmutes into something else. The cycle continues. Continuously, in a dynamic way, it's moving in this way. Something is an eater and something gets eaten. Again, we have to look at the Upanishads for these descriptions. And then, of course, there's the energetic field, something like the morphological field, something that gives shape to something, something that is a localized version of a universal energy that is present everywhere. It's within us. We can describe it in a way as breath. It doesn't literally mean breath. It's that aspect of energy distributed also in 5 ways. 5 senses, 5 objects of the senses, 5 organs of reaction, and 5 pranas, 5 versions of the energy. And that subtle entity is driven by something else. What is it? We call it mind. Mind, we all know what mind is, but none of us can describe it. What exactly is mind? Give us a definition. Nobody can say. You can know what it does. You can observe its activities. All your reactions, all your emotions, all your meanderings, all your wanderings, all your disturbances, all your impressions, unconscious or otherwise, all come up into a field. We can see it as a field in which activity arises, plays around, has this diminishing thing. So it is something like a wave system, a field in which waves operate. Waves are coming in. We know it because we can see the origin and we can see a peak and we can see it diminishing, fading, 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 finished. Next one coming in. All of these so far rely on one factor, time. And they operate, they're distinguished, made as individuals because of another component called space. But when you diminish these factors, time and space, things become more subtle, less clear in the conventional way, less individual, more immense, more general, more subtle, more truthful. That yields, therefore, to what we call intellect, a discerning faculty that is able to stand back, evaluate, make executive decisions, see things in the proper light. More than reasoning, but yet it uses reasoning. And we can also observe it. It's not the final observer. The final datum, we have to look further. We have to move into our forest area more. Let's see where we are now. A person, a woodcutter, hearing an inner voice, go within, go within. And we all hear that inner voice, a voice of conscience that says, we have to improve, we have to go deeper. Often expressed in different ways. A student might think, I have to compete more. Seeing that everybody is streaking ahead of me in a class, I have to now do something different. I have to exceed them. A drive for improvement, a drive to do better. And not just to maintain the status quo. Everybody wants increase. And that increase is increase of pleasure, increase of happiness. Now, that increase is on the surface, that is, at the material level, is a shallow and hollow thing. It has hollow and shallow because just like shallow water, it moves quickly. It goes swiftly. It comes and it goes. So something else is there an area of bliss. That is, in the Kathopanishad, which is we can see, it tells us the dissimilarity between this fundamental element and the senses that have their rising and setting. Rising and setting means that a fundamental component of the mind are the senses, and they express themselves in a physical way as the organs. So you can see how one form shapes the other, shapes the other, shapes the other. But there's one thing that has no shape, and this we call Anandamaya Kosha, that is, that particular sheath which contains bliss only. And when all the senses have risen and fallen in dream and then fallen completely in dreamless sleep, this is an area which is blissful to us, an area of potentiality, an area of creativity, until finally we discover the fundamental thing, that which has been watching it all the time, the immortal self, what we call Atman. Now, there are different terms for it. I discussed this with a devotee yesterday. Why do we say Purusha? Why do we say Atman? Why do we say Brahman? Why do we use all these terms? Sometimes it changes. Sometimes we say Prana. All of these terms mean the same thing, but are enough to give us a different flavor, a different understanding of the same thing, because it's difficult for people to understand something that is subtle. Purusha is something that is compiled of two things, two words. First of all, the indweller of a city, Puri, a city. And then secondly, Purna, fullness. So lest you think that this Purusha is the size of a thumb and is encapsulated and caged in by all the other things and can't get out, poor thing, is imprisoned like this. There's a book called Imprisoned Splendor. That's a beautiful book, but it gives us the wrong idea. Are we imprisoned, or is there a fullness? Fullness means there's no emptiness anywhere. We can find it anywhere and everywhere, actually. So that's a very useful term. Atman means the self. Self, but what variety of self? Physical self, energetic self, mental self, intellectual self, blissful self? No. It is that particular entity which stands as a self and is not dependent on anything else. Other things depend on it, but it is self-dependent, relies on nothing. Even if all the other things go, that just remains. And that, of course, is the highest treasure of all. Your own immortal self, that religion calls God. So we have to find it out. We are destined to find it out. We are driven to find it out. And we may wander off in different ways and different areas. We may be hooked up on one world or the other. But this parable that Sri Ramakrishna tells us is designed to say, there is a forest, an area unknown, and therefore we shouldn't fear it, nor should we be content with our status quo. We should look a little further. And when we look a little further, we have the urge to go even more, until we find a final datum. We can't go any further. Parable is a beautiful parable because wood cutting is an operation. Wood cutting was a way of earning a living. And you're cutting something down. But the rest of his journey, although he's cutting down sandalwood and so on, it comes to a point where he's not cutting down anything. He's discovering something that is already there. So there's a certain point in our spiritual journey where this struggle, this effort of struggle ceases and gives way to a pure discovery of something already there. The first, we can take it and use it, earn our living with it, the physical. The second, we can also use it. But the others, we can also use them, no doubt. We can gain in richness, no doubt. No question about that. Man's search for wealth. Sri Ramakrishna takes this. Of course, he's not the only one to take it. You take all the parables of Jesus, they're saying exactly the same thing. The kingdom of heaven. Kingdom of heaven is like a treasure under the earth. Somebody digs it up. All kinds of parables are there, orientated around this kingdom of heaven as a treasure. It's the language of Jesus. You can use alternative language because where the kingdom is, the king also is. So to find out that Lord of the universe that sits within is equivalent to finding out the kingdom. And when you find the king and the kingdom, you have access to everything. Seek ye first the kingdom of heaven, other things will be added unto thee. You'll get all the abundance and wealth that you require, unasked, because you're now in a commanding position. So when we don't make a separation, we don't say wealth is wrong. We say wealth has a great utility. Give it to everybody. Look how many of the philanthropic missions and institutions there are that require money. Ramakrishna Math mission requires money. The Ramakrishna mission for its missionary work requires huge, vast amounts of money. We're not anti-money. I remember that I had that misunderstanding. I thought, oh, see how Sri Ramakrishna recoils from coins and money and so on. Yes, but you see, he had a benefactor. And he never discouraged any householder from earning a maintenance. So I had this idea also, you see. And my teacher did something remarkable for me. He made me read a book, not read, study it. Study a book. Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill. You'd expect a teacher, a spiritual teacher, to say, look, let us study more of the Upanishads. Let us go into the Brahma Sutras. Let us go into the vast body of Vedantic texts orientated toward the Advaita philosophy, difficult to understand, subtle in its meaning. But he gives me a book, Think and Grow Rich. And in this way, I got over any of these scruples. And I realized that wealth is also a manifestation of the divine. Abundance is for, if you put it like this, in another story that Jesus tells, see, if a child asks its father for some bread, will he give him a rock, a stone, to crunch maliciously, smash all your son's teeth and all that? No. You ask for bread, you'll get bread. Whatever your needs, they are provided. That simple Christian prayer. See, give us this day our daily bread. With confidence, we can say it. Now, every word said, of course, has a different layer and level of meaning. Because I am the living bread, I'm the living water, also is being told. In other words, if you look for me, if you seek for me, that's all that you require. The only food you require is the sustenance that the life giver produces, this divinity produces. So it's a profound story, simple story that can be investigated thoroughly, starting off with, what is my status quo? If I am a woodcutter, what wood am I cutting? What am I getting for it? And then all psychological issues. Am I getting enough? Do I think that this forest only contains this? Am I prepared to explore it? Am I prepared to do it with an adventurous, exploratory attitude, with a sporting attitude? Am I prepared to skip into the forest? We do a psychology exercise sometimes. in connection with what psychology calls shadows. Shadows, threatening things that we keep in the closet, in the psychologically unconscious closet. We're afraid of them. For example, one of them could be anger. Supposing it's yours, anger. Then we don't wish to really face it. We just accept, oh, I got angry, so what? And then we make excuses. I had every reason to be angry. We come up with a phrase, justifiable anger. No anger can be justified. What anger do you think can ever be justified? And then if you take the great saints and sages, did they not get angry? Did they not put curses on people? Well, we have to say, either they lost control, in which case their spirituality diminished, or they had the capacity to feign it. Vishwamitra, he was a man who feigned his anger, having gone through the suffering of anger itself, being the most angry person, determinedly angry, wishing to destroy completely Vashishta. Still, he continues and finally gets his Brahmajnana. But he's still able to use that. It's stored there in the memory, make it useful. We hear in the Christian text how Jesus strides into the marketplace around the temple and chases away and overturns the tables. And those people who may not be too much in favor of Christ will say, you see, he was just an angry person. See how he did this? Upset the whole commercial basis of Jerusalem. Now, bear in mind, of course, historically, he could not have done it just as a single person and upturning tables without receiving opposition and being arrested. So we have to assume that he had followers who helped him in doing this, a kind of revolutionary movement. But from a moral point of view, he was teaching a lesson. And you see how the Temple of Jerusalem, if we are discussing that, is arranged just like Hindu temples, a series of courtyards. On the outside of every pilgrimage temple, whether it is Christian, or whether it is based in Rome, or whether it is based in South India or wherever, the great temples will always have commerce operating outside. Please buy a statue here, buy a relic there, buy a mala here, buy something else there. Buy a plastic Virgin Mary in Rome, or whatever it is. See, same thing, commerce and industry, same thing in Jewish times. But it was the commercial hub. It was also a fortress there where the Roman garrison was held. But all that aside, the outside is commerce. The outside is food. The outside's interest is in material welfare. Nothing wrong with it. But don't think that it is there alone. The temple is there for that alone. No. The whole body is there for a spiritual purpose. The whole mind is there for a spiritual purpose. The whole energy is there for a spiritual purpose. We simply have to gather it up and renegotiate it, reposition it into the interior, turn it within from the outside. When we do that progressively, where it's equivalent to going through the unknown area, the forest. Anyway, coming back to this idea of shadow, you normally give people a scenario and we can dramatize it. We place people in a dark room and then maybe over-dramatize it a little bit by putting some Hitchcock movie music on or something, some kind of sinister movie music, something that immediately makes one a little fearful, a little expectant. It's very easy to generate a mood through music. Instantaneously, you can change a mood through music. Then you have a guided kind of meditation, relax. You give people an instruction. You're going to imagine now a forest area, and this is in the twilight of the day. And it is getting darker and darker, and you lost your way home. You give that to the people, get them to enact a scenario where all the trees are disfigured and threatening and shadows, and the imagination is playing havoc. And you get them to view there's a monster at the end. Now you dialogue with it, you name it. You say, what do you want from me? What do I want from you? How can I help you? All of these things, all of these questions. And all of a sudden you'll find this monster disappears and becomes either runs away or becomes completely non-threatening, because you learn something more about your own psyche. The way to learn about your own psyche and your own self in whatever way you define it is, first of all, to say, I am here now. Secondly, I'm prepared to take an adventure. I'm prepared to go further. I'm prepared to look deeper. I'm prepared to look with an expectancy of something better. And looking for something better, what will I find? I won't leave it there. I won't be satisfied there. Even in spiritual life, we can be satisfied with something there, something that is not deep enough, but we think it is. And then when we really assess it properly, we find something called spiritual pride coming in. Do you meditate? Oh, I meditate for long hours. Oh, I see. I wish I could meditate. And when I meditate, it's only 5 minutes. So you meditate for how long? And then, of course, when pride comes in, exaggeration comes in. He said, 20 hours, 2 hours becomes 20 hours now. See, 20 hours becomes 20 days and so on. All exaggerated, all puffed up. And when new people come to a study group or something, you can see characteristics like that. An attitude that says, who are you? And we have been here for years and years and years, but you're a plebeian and you have just walked in and you know nothing. So this spiritual pride is extremely dangerous and is part and parcel of potential downfall. But genuinely go deeper. And the deeper you go, the humbler you become, the more generous you become, because the wealth becomes more expansive. So a very simple parable. And the practical application of it is, as I mentioned, I repeat it, take stock of where are you now, find out what is the next step, and every day make your inquiry deeper means more intense, more intensive. Your spiritual practice should inch inwardly more intensively. Now, another question may have arisen in connection with this, in connection with spiritual life in general. How, knowing my difficulties, my failures, my weakness, my vulnerabilities, how can I make the adjustment? Supposing we say that we should love everybody and we should get on with everybody better, that we should be better listeners, better communicators, and yet we somehow fall short of that. How can we make an adjustment? So the idea is just like investigating the deeper treasures in a forest. Because when you go to the level of sandalwood, when you go to the level of silver, gold, diamonds, and so on and so forth, all of those levels, when you uncover all these treasures, what becomes of your interest in woodcutting? Did you deliberately renounce it? Or you simply found something better? So when we look at a person, we have to understand this person also comes in the same layers and levels of the forest. Every person is a forest. And it's not that we're just exploring our own self. Whatever we find here, we'll find in the next body and everywhere. So it will change our attitude. And when we investigate forest in us, we should be prepared to see another person, particularly a person who is most difficult, the most difficult person you can find, the most challenging person you can find, and see, is this also like a forest, unknown, unexplored, with difficulties like me, with emotional problems like me, with weaknesses like me? Can I then also mentally, in my imagination, go into that forest and see that the external aspect of it is the woodcutting aspect? And then I can go a little deeper, a little deeper, a little deeper, until, there you are. The diamonds of all diamonds are there. The treasure of all treasures are there. The King of Kings is there. The kingdom of God is there. The complete fullness of existence is there. We should try to do this with the most difficult cases we can, with a sense of adventure, challenging ourselves. Can we really see this? Do we really have divine eyes to see this divinity from within? Can we see it everywhere? Can we take it up like a sport and see how we can manage? Will we lose anything by it? Nothing. Will we gain anything by it? Oh, yes. We'll find the treasure, not only in here, but in the other person and everywhere. Isn't that a valuable thing? And what happens when we find that treasure? A treasure sparkles. A treasure shines. What we found as a difficult person, the inward Atman will shine. Can't resist. When we find perfection there, perfection comes through and penetrates everywhere. And this is the key to what we call spiritual healing. What did the Christ do? He saw things in a different way. His wiring was different. Instead of seeing all this oppression, military oppression and health difficulties and lame people, people who were ridiculed by society, people who were reviled by society, and he keeps company with them, tax collectors and prostitutes. And when this perfection comes through, he says, thy faith has saved you. The dead awaken, the blind see, the lame walk, only because that Christ saw that depth of perfection in the other person. You're playing a game like that, you're playing well. So we should learn the art of doing that, discovering each layer in the depths of every forest we encounter, not just our own forest. You'll find tremendous treasure on every level, by the way. Everybody has something unique that they can do, nobody else can do. Don't dismiss it. Find out what it is, and if you can't find it, encourage it. Bring it out. There's a whole key to education. What is Sister Nivedita's idea of educating? Same as Vivekananda's. Knowledge is already there. You don't have to insert anything, like a microchip or something. You bring it out. It's there, you bring it out by itself. You can set the conditions so a self-discovery occurs and an awakening occurs with it. In this way, we make people world movers. They already have the potential capacity for it. So that is the idea. All right, so this was the parable. You want me to go on with it? Or you have another question?
Swamiji, on the continuation of that, how do we explore other forests? I mean, could you throw some more light onto that, basically to understand, what the persona is, and then or rather what is their personality is, go beyond the personality and try to understand them? If you could throw some light on that, please.
So I'll repeat some things that I have said previously, and you may remember them and recognize them. People don't come in a unit, they come in layers. They look like a unit. And we summarily say, this is a unit, this is an individual. And we deal with people on an individual basis, and we can like or dislike them. Or we can categorize them. Actually, the more individualistic we are, the more we categorize people, and we tend to categorize them wrongly. Now, when we do the Enneagram, of course, we do categorize people into personality types, not with the idea of criticizing them, but with the idea of appreciating them. And how we do that is to appreciate the levels and layers that they have within them. So if we continue with the analogy of the forest, and we reduce the layers, and reduce the layers basically to physical, psychological, and actual. Actual is not a layer. It is a source. It is blissful base. It's the reality that never changes. So if we categorize it simply like that, is take the physical level. It doesn't matter how awkward a person is. That person's body has suffered in the past, may be suffering now, and definitely will be suffering in the future. Should we not be compassionate, regardless of what toxic things come out of their mouth, or how they like me, or how they dislike me, how they oppose me, or how they praise me? And their attitude toward me says more about me than it is about them. My reaction to them says more about me than it does about them. So let us try to be compassionate on the basis that I know what suffering is. I know what physical suffering is. Every person knows what physical suffering is. The other person is subject to physical suffering at some time or other. The absence of ideal health conditions is what we call happiness or health. I'm healthy. Why? I don't have arthritis on the knee. As soon as I have arthritis on the knee, I'm not healthy, nor am I happy. So our compassion is necessary because it reforms our own mind. Next step, psychologically. On the psychological level, more or less everybody is suffering. Very few people are not suffering. Those great saints and sages realize people with an equilibrium of mind are not suffering on this level. Or if suffering takes place, they know how quickly to adjust it. Like two runners running in a race, 100 meters or something. The trained one will huff and puff but recover quickly. The other one will huff and puff and collapse. So this psychological difficulty is what we want to be free from, this psychological pain. But go further. When you go further in your investigation, you find only the Lord of the universe standing there. Oh Lord, there you are with these overcoats. One overcoat called psychological level, another one on the top called physical level. And on the psychological level, we should surely have compassion since we are all suffering on that level ourselves. And you'll find that every kind of reaction that I find is difficult, is awkward or irritating, is only because that person is suffering and trying to form some strategy in life. And all that comes from selfishness. But are we not all selfish? Are we not all suffering as a consequence? Should we not evoke our compassion at that level also? And every feeling, genuine feeling of empathy and compassion will be in our favor. It'll all serve to refine our own mind. It'll promote this quality of sattva and purify our own mind. But it'll see things in a better, more balanced way, more compassionate way. And that means our reactions will be not disruptive, not against us. And then finally, when we come to this aspect of this inner treasure, where we find the Lord of the universe in all fullness, perfect, full and free, standing there, then this compassion, this empathy, this feeling gives way to adoration. And adoration is the final goal, if you will, or the final reactive mode we should place ourselves in. Lord, you are standing there. So in scripture, we find this described as typically seeing the self in all and all beings in the self. I am the knower in all fields, says Krishna in the Bhagavad Gita, 13th chapter. This is a field, a physical field, a psychological field, and behind that, spirit. And when we find it, we find even the physical, even the psychological, even the emotional, even the intellectual is all only one thing, spirit. The only thing that exists is spirit. That realization comes. Then what are we doing? All our wood cutting, all our exploration is just a game. We revalue it. In the Bhagavad Gita in the Bhagavatam, I mentioned several times, Sri Krishna says, I'm playing this game of Maya on myself, not on you. It's not a cruel joke against you. It's on me. I'm the only entity that is here. So this realization will come. And that, of course, instantaneously makes us a blessing person. Instead of criticizing, we start blessing. Instead of trying to change and adjust something and fill in invisible defects, we see only fullness there. Nothing to fill, no holes. God didn't make the world with holes and make his occupation constantly filling them. Our misjudgment is the world is made from holes. God made some errors. He made something full of holes. Our job, along with his, is to fill them up. What a silly thing. Silly God making silly holes has a silly occupation of filling them. Can it be so? Or it was full already. So all our actions become manifested actions, expressive actions, that's all. Doing the same thing, but expressing love only. As soon as we see the individuality there, the surface movements, we don't go deeper, then we become reactive. And that reaction is against us and causes us suffering. And then we wonder, why am I suffering? It must have been my previous life or something.
May I just interrupt you to understand this statement a little better? Before coming to realize this, my job is that of a police inspector and to catch a thief. And I, as a job, I have to be respectfully catch the thief and like take all disciplinary action. But like then how to dissociate that if I am not able to see the fullness behind or within the thief, but still as per the requirements of the play, I have to act, then how to keep my mind in an equanimous or calm condition?
In my childhood at the beach, there was something called it's an old Victorian tradition called Punch and Judy show. And it's all derived from, all the laughter and hilarity comes from these puppets, hand puppets, carrying sticks and hitting each other. Somehow children find that funny. So here's the thing, we don't take it seriously. And the fact is that the policeman who is catching and disciplining the thief and arresting him and bringing him to justice, that's his job. A road sweeper's job. That's his spiritual path. What is Arjun's spiritual path? Being a military man. Fighting for justice and killing. That's his job. What is a policeman's job? Making things safe, arresting malcreants. Keeping society safe. That's his job. What is a housewife's job? Keeping the house. What is a student's job? Being an ideal student. A road sweeper's job to sweep the road. Swami's job to sit and talk. Hopefully more. A lawyer's job to be a lawyer. Accountant's job to be an accountant. A university professor to be a university professor. That's their spiritual life. If you don't take it as a spiritual life, then these paradoxes, seeming paradoxes will occur. This was Arjun's problem also, by the way. He didn't see a connection. Krishna points it out to him in 18 chapters, 17 chapters, I should say. First chapter is, this is the status quo. 17 chapters of teaching are there. Actually 18, because the fundamental teaching is our ignorance. The fundamental teaching is the status quo, the assessment. Where am I? Then how can I make the adjustment? And so Krishna tells him, no, you have to go and fight. Can I fight if I see God in the other? Yes, because God isn't confined in a cage inside. I'm not killing God. I'm killing the body, there's no doubt. Many other bodies will be woven. So many other lives are there. In this particular scene, Act 1, Scene 1. Act 2, Scene 2 is different. And that's the problem. So the problem is, we think that the range of operation is the only thing that is here. When we go deeper, 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 we find, oh, it's not the only thing here. You don't have to give up your job or anything like that. That job that you find is your spiritual path.
So essentially, by the word compassion, you are asking to do our duty, or?
Should you not be compassionate toward the thief? Why is the thief a thief? If Narada had not been compassionate to a thief, we wouldn't have Valmiki and the Ramayana. Valmiki wasn't always Valmiki. Valmiki means the one where an anthill grew up over. He was a thief.
Mm-hmm. Yes, I am.
Okay, so how should we regard a thief? Should we not regard a thief in the same way? Why is he being a thief? He's being a thief because he has to put bread on the table for his family. But once he realizes that there's a better way, a deeper way, the more meaning to life, then he sits and meditates, and the story of Rama comes. By repeating Mara, 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 he gets Rama, Rama, Rama. What is Mara? Mara is the tempter. Mara is the one that leads a person to be a thief. And when we repeat it, we find that same energy that makes us go and steal is the energy that saves us and gives us strength, called Rama. So within a thief is some goodness. See, there are no bad people, there are only bad behaviors. Somebody who knows that will do their duty, but see, okay, within you, even on an emotional level, psychological level, and physical level, something precious is there, something unique is there. That is why we have a prison reform system that says if you're a thief, we won't cut your hand off. Although that may well deter thieves, we won't use fear. We'll try and get you to think of yourself in a more worthwhile way. See if you can reform yourself. In other words, another way of saying, see if you can go into the forest in a deeper way. So while we don't think thieving is a good social activity, there are other underlying social causes for it, inevitably. We were discussing this the other day. So in Zimbabwe, you can expect to have your house broken into maybe once every 2 months. In South Africa, it's so cute. You have to have walls and security people, all the rest of it. So what is the cause of it? Poverty is the cause of that. Now, I'm not saying all thieves have that. No. One motive for it can be greed. Are you exempt from greed? When you misappropriate the divine energy supplied to you as thought, as activity for healthy physical pursuits, are you not a thief? Are you not stealing? Is there anybody who's exempt from being a thief? When you rationalize things in this way and then add compassion, and then at the end of it, adoration, you've made a complete analysis. You've gone to the depths of your forest. And if you're saying it's not possible, it means you're only at the woodcutting stage. You can go further. You can go deeper.
Swamiji, in one of the earlier sessions, there was a question where, you gave us some steps and you said if something is troubling or if something we know is not good, we kind of have to distance ourselves from it, avoid it. So now when we were talking today, you said challenge our attitude and see if the divine compassion can come in us, and you said go find the difficult ones and challenge ourselves. So I find this bit contradictory and confusing to me. When do I do what?
Yes, yeah. So you see, if somebody is difficult, I'll give you an example. Supposing somebody is absolutely difficult, say somebody in the family is difficult, then maybe it's better to avoid them. That's a good strategy. But avoiding them physically is different from avoiding them mentally. Mentally, can you not bless them? Can you not put them into your meditation and shower them with flowers of blessings? Should you not continue to be compassionate toward them? If they are occupying your mind, in other words, there's a problem within which says this person is troubled. I can't shake off my thinking about it. All right, bring them out. See the God in them. But to physically encounter them, that's something different. If you're obliged to do that, of course. If you have no other way but entering into their field, let's say a work situation where you have no way of avoiding the person, then you should at least have a challenging attitude toward it, toward your own reaction to them. Challenging attitude toward yourself, not toward them. You're not challenging them, you're challenging your own attitudes.
Thank you so much.
Of course, if you can, you avoid them, because you see, we have to eschew a company which is going to unsettle the mind. But the problem is we are always keeping company with ourselves, and we are the most unsettling factor in our mind.
Yeah, always.
Swami, I just have a quick question. If we reach that ultimate state where we know we're playing Maya on ourselves, would you not feel a little bit indifferent then, because you know it's all a play and it's just you on yourself?
There could be a temptation to do that, to be unfeeling, but then that's also a contradiction, because the detachment from the surface is one thing, but underneath it is deeper love. And it's the deeper love that comes out. This is why seeing God in all evokes the feeling of uplifting the other. If God is in front of you in a beggar's uniform, saying, "Will you recognize me?" Yes, come, let me clothe you, let me feed you, let me wash your feet. So compassion actually increases. But it's not compassion thinking the other person is in a condition to be corrected. It's adoration. There's a big difference. Out of love for you, God plays the game of an incarnation and comes and raises things up for the next 1,000 years. Out of compassion for you, your guru comes and takes on all your difficulties. Out of compassion for you, Jesus surrenders his whole body on a cross. But it's not a vague kind of compassion. It's not a conditional compassion. It is a deep feeling of love. It goes really beyond the word compassion. Compassion is a way of tuning, making the mind pure. But this goes beyond that. This now is completely immersed in divine love. Very different. That means you'll engage fully in the world. You won't detach from it. Like an observer. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. Peace, peace, peace be unto all.